Coming up on Over a Barrel. It happened very quickly. Let's get right into it. Why have prices in certain parts of the country, like where I am, suddenly just jolted above, not just above $3 a gallon, but well into $3 a gallon? I've got some stations near me that are suddenly now at $3.59 and climbing. So what's going on? Find out Patrick's answer and why he also X'd out a senator? Is that a thing? Oh, Over a Barrel starts right now. And welcome to the program on Over a Barrel. I'm Matt McClain alongside Patrick DeHaan. And Patrick, I'm just going to jump right on into it. First things first, though. If you like this program, we ask you to subscribe, obviously. And if you have questions or comments, maybe complaints toward Patrick or whatever the case may be.
If they have complaints, there's a different email address for that.
There you go. Well, Patrick, give the contact information for folks who really have some questions for us.
Well, yeah, if you do, throw us an email, podcast@gasbuddy.com. That's where you can find both of us, or you can reach out to either one of us. I'm Gas Buddy Guy on Twitter or X, and he's Over a Barrel Mad. And, of course, the program you can find on Twitter or X at Over a Barrel Show, and that's where you'll find us on Facebook as well. And as Matt said, throw us a like, a follow us, subscribe. We're on YouTube as well. You can find us under the Gas Buddy handle on YouTube, and that's where we also upload video versions of everything we talk about, Matt, this morning. So, if you're like me and you tune into YouTube and check out a couple videos, come on over to the Gas Buddy channel and tune in.
Absolutely. All right. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I got to jump right on into it. I'm a bit disturbed. It's a bunch of hybrids here. I'm disturbed, concerned, scared, a little bit on the angry side. Patrick said gas prices wouldn't hit $4 a gallon. I just paid a ridiculous amount of money per gallon. It wasn't $4, but it happened very quickly. Let's get right into it. Why have prices in certain parts of the country, like where I am, suddenly just jolted above, not just above $3 a gallon, but well into $3 a gallon? I've got some stations near me that are suddenly now at $3.59 and climbing. So what's going on?
Yeah, Matt, this is seasonality 2.0. Last week is seasonality 1.0. Now it's seasonality 2.0, second week in a row. As you mentioned, the national average is now its highest level since last November, $3.41 a gallon this morning. It's actually what we paid exactly on this date a year ago. But, Matt, as you mentioned, price is now up 26 cents in the last month. I don't know if it's going to give anyone any comfort, Matt. Probably not you, but this has been expected. We've long talked about on the program, right, starting the year when we introduced our fuel outlook. By the way, if anyone wants to go look at that now and see how that's holding up, feel free. We had predicted that, Matt, the average in March would be $3.39 a gallon. We're at $3.40, so we can't say this is surprising. But to your point,
but it happened in a jolt. That's what.
It did. It kind of is happening very quickly, especially looking at some of these big increases. Matt, Ohio, you are the number one winner, not against your arch rival Michigan Wolverines, but you're the biggest winner and the biggest increase. 30-cent increase, Matt, in Ohio in the last week. And there's a bunch of states here. Missouri up 25 cents from a week ago. North Dakota, 23 cents. Kansas, 21 cents. Arizona, Oklahoma, South Dakota. By the way, if you want to see how bad your pain is and compare it to your neighbors, head on over to prices.gasbuddy.com. That's where you'll find all our gas price information that I look at, that I use. But to your point, Matt, there was a particularly ugly pinch that happened very recently and quite unexpectedly, actually. Michigan saw a price jump to $3.69 a gallon. It was, it's pretty bad when your parents say, "What the heck happened?" So to your point, Matt, as we get older, we pay more attention to what the pump is. And my dad's shooting me a text message and said, "What the heck is up with that?" And I said, in Michigan, I'm scratching my head too. And as an analyst, usually you have most of the answers, but not last night. Because the interesting thing is, in the Great Lakes, the wholesale price of gasoline has actually gone down about 20 cents a gallon from a week ago. So the wholesale price fell, but the retail price went up. So that's one of those moves that I can't really explain myself. I try to explain a lot to our Gas Buddy members, but that's just one I cannot get my brain wrapped around. Is what in the world they thought. I think it started with a couple stations and then everyone just went up. But
Yeah.
If anyone's listening in Michigan, do not pay that $3.69 price. That is just. There are a few things that get me more furious than unwarranted price hikes or things that just don't make sense on paper, and that's one of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's what has even, like, for example, right now I'm sitting in Kentucky. Yesterday I was in 4 states. Yeah, I'm not joking. I've just traveled.
Wow.
So the point.
All at once?
Well, with
Did you go to the Four Corners?
I mean, no, I didn't go to the Four Corners, but no, I mean, the reality is I'm now beginning my higher travel season, if you will, with video production and other aspects. And it the timing couldn't be worse as far as the rising gas prices.
Yeah.
So it has happened so suddenly. I think that's what I mean, right out the gate before we even started recording, what did I ask you? I'm like, what is going on? I mean,
yeah. And just about that same voice, that kind of little bit of a tremble there, like, what's happening?
And your dad is texting you. I mean, this is.
Oh, yeah. Then you know it's bad.
That's my point. I mean, you have personal friends and family now going, Patrick, what is happening here? So I mean,
in case I don't do this for 9 to 5, I really enjoy those late night texts that are like, "What? Explain this to me." I mean, apparently, I'm the one that has to explain or justify it. But Matt, to your point, this is not just the exception of Michigan, where I can't really justify that price hike. This is something that. Stations aren't just thinking, oh, hey, there's more people on the road or it's spring break, right? That's the number one thing people think is, oh, spring break is around the corner. Stations are going to raise prices. No, this actually has to do all with the seasons. And as you yourself just mentioned, this is the prime example of what happens in the spring. You drive more.
Yeah.
You drive more. It's getting warm. You've been to 4 states. Thank you, Matt, for pushing up everyone's gas price. Apparently you're driving around a truck that gets, 7 gallons per mile. Kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons why prices go up in the spring. We have cabin fever.
I mean, I got a job to do, Patrick. It's not all easy.
Well, exactly. And regardless, job or fun travel, that's why prices go up in the spring. But it's not just demand goes up that makes this a pinch. It's kind of a layered cake. It's definitely not as tasty, but that's kind of the bottom layer is that demand goes up. The second layer that exacerbates the issue is the changeover to summer gasoline, which we've talked about, which is happening everywhere now. Everywhere in the country has started the transition. And the problem, Matt, is not necessarily the summer blends, but it's going from supply that was above average in the winter. All that above average supply gets knocked out because at the end of the year, or at the end of the day, I should say, and at the end of the next couple of months, you can't sell that winter gasoline anymore. And so refiners get rid of it all. And they're basically starting to stockpile this new type of gas.
Yeah.
But there's not much in the stockpile yet because this just happened.
So prices just simply get to jolt at that point, and
Right. It's kind of like Matt, if you were to wake up tomorrow, right? You're looking at the home market. Let's take, for example, the red hot Florida home market. What's going to happen if suddenly tomorrow there's a whole lot less homes in the market? It's going to jolt the price up. Right.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem over the last couple of years with the housing market is there's just not enough new inventory. And that's what's contributed to higher home prices. And right now, at least, there's not as much demand for homes. And that's why the increases in home values has slowed down. It hasn't reversed. Right. But gasoline prices in oil markets are very much like the housing market, except, there are some differences, obviously some pretty big differences. People still need a roof over their head. They need to drive. But at the end of the day, it's what a buyer and seller are willing to agree to a price on. And in the spring, it becomes more of a seller's market, Matt, because buyers like yourself, who are represented by the stations who fill their tanks, you need more fuel. And when there's not as much of it, that's the means is that there's not as many sellers in the market right now because some refiners are doing maintenance and because the summer blends has reduced supply. So there's inevitably less people selling gasoline right now at the trading level. It's just a little harder to come by because of all this maintenance happening. And that's what generally pushes prices up. And that same system, right, the same market that I'm describing to you is why prices go down in the fall because there's less people driving because we switched back to cheaper winter gasoline, which is more plentiful. And this is the seasonal up and down that we get every year.
So, and my argument to you, which you are not disputing in any way, I want to
no softballs here. Give me a hard ball.
Yeah, no. I mean, you are not disputed. You have not disputed this, at least up until now. You may dispute it suddenly today, but up until now, my argument has been, if we're going to have these price spikes and whatever and whatnot, why don't we just create one blend of gas? And so if we have to use the summer blend or whatever, why not just use it year round? What's the harm in that? If it's cleaner in the summer, why is it not cleaner in the winter? There's the logical consumer question.
Yeah, no, it is. I've proposed that several times in saying that we should just have a blend of gasoline. Now there are some differences, right? Diesel, for example, in the winter, Matt, has a different cetane number, which, by the way, is like the same as octane, and it's basically startability. Right, because it's colder out. You need something that basically will light easier.
So why
and
can't
summer
you just
gasoline
keep that same blend in the summertime for diesel?
Well, because it gels up. So there are properties that change with the air temperatures, right? So just like why don't you wear the same cold weather outfit in the summer, Matt? Is because you're just not designed. Things aren't designed that way. You're not designed to wear long pants, 3 layers in the summer. You're just gonna, sweat your tush off. So, and that's the kind of yearly changes that just happen. The temperatures change. So, I'm sure we could come up with something, Matt. But there's it's not like the government is thinking about this, right? Nobody's really pushing for, hey, let's come to one common sense standard that can work everywhere that meets these requirements.
Well, I mean, surely I guess my point is, surely we can do better. There has to be a more efficient way of doing this. I mean, there just has to be. We've got to be smart enough to figure these types of things out. And we've got to be, in a situation where we've got to look at we're creating the problem by our own doing and then looking at it and saying, okay, well, it just is what it is. Well, prices are going to spike in March and April and get out of control for a month or two, not literally out of control. I mean, that would be like $10 a gallon, which we're not obviously saying, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, they spike and then then you got these mountaintops and valleys in the prices. And it's like, well, that makes no sense. I mean, why, if there is a more efficient way, then the consumer has a right to scream out, stop it. You know what I'm saying?
And the consumers don't often, I mean, gasoline is one of those purchases that a lot of them need. So maybe they don't always yell, stop it. They complain, but they may not be complaining to the right people. They're politicians. They should say, why do we have these different blends? Tell your congressman, I'm sick of this. Why don't we just move to something cleaner, smarter, more logical year round? It would make sense if we can figure that out. So yeah, I don't like the seasonal ups and downs either. I don't think anyone does.
It's frustrating. And I know one of the things that we used to call them tweets. Now that it's X, I don't know if we're Xing now. I don't know what's going on, but you have X'd. It feels weird to say that, but I mean, that's, I don't know what else to call it. Who are you Xing today, Patrick? It looks like you've created a little bit of speaking of officials and politicians, it looks like you are creating a bit of noise. Talk to us about this.
I suppose you could say I X'd out Senator Chuck Grassley. There was politicians are loving to talk about, right, oil and gas. Yeah, X'd out. Politicians do love to talk about things that they don't always know. And I think yesterday I've seen a couple politicians, Tennessee, a couple politicians across the board representing different states have just tweeted things that are just ridiculous. And it's funny now because people tag me on Twitter or X, a Gas Buddy guy. They tag me when they see a politician saying something that they want me to fact check or they want me to comment on. And yesterday, somebody got my attention shortly after Chuck Grassley had tweeted this, and I'll quote. What he said was, quote, "Welcome to Pres Biden's America, where the Fed government chooses energy dependence over energy dominance and independence," end quote. And so, I really don't like these politicians that have no idea trying to make something that's political into, something like this. And so there are some points that can be made about the Biden administration being, openly anti-fossil fuel. However, when it comes to the energy dominance independence he describes, my response was, quote, President Biden's America, where net imports continue to drop and domestic oil production has reached a record 13.3 million barrels per day. You couldn't have slapped yourself in the face harder, Senator, end quote. Because my graphic that I shared shows that the net imports of crude oil and petroleum-related products, we're a net exporter now. So energy independence, that's pretty much the definition, is you're exporting more than you're importing. And by the way, somebody in my mention said that's not the definition. They said the definition of energy independence is somebody who will never import anything. That's not true. That's not true. It's because there's always going to be a time where there's different qualities in oil. And Matt, we've talked on this in the past podcasts, that there's different weights to oils, right? It's kind of like going into an auto car store or a car. I'm trying to think, auto parts, and how many different oils they have along the wall, right? Every car is a little different. Well, every country is a little different with the amount of crude oil and the quality and quantity that they produce. So we export a lot of lighter, sweeter crude oils, because those are desirable. And we import a lot of heavy sour crude oils. So somebody that said, we're never going to be energy independent because we import, that's ridiculous, because we export more than we import. That's why we call it net. I know it's really complicated for some people.
Now, I'm going to play the other side here because somebody's got
to. Do it.
I mean,
please do.
The Biden administration is obviously touting more electric vehicles, and I think that's indisputable. They are wanting to do complete changeover from fossil fuels to electric, which I said not 30 seconds ago that I was going to play the other side, but I'm too factual for that. I have to say, electricity is also generated by a lot of fossil fuels, but that's a whole other issue. But the fact that I'm trying to get out there is they are trying to push that EV out there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And
so I mean,
I'll even one up you and say that they're openly hostile towards fossil fuels. But politicians say, and what they do, right? There's talking the talk, there's walking the walk. The Biden administration and some politicians may talk the talk about how they're going to end fossil fuels. Doesn't mean a darn thing, right? Because oil companies are going to do what they're going to do, subject to the limits of the law. And they're still operating within the limits of the law, and they're all still producing 13.3 million barrels a day. Where people get it correct is that there still will be long-term implications from this hostility towards the oil industry. It has not manifested yet in a material way, right? AKA, the Biden administration can say whatever it wants, but the actions they're taking, they're doing a pretty bad job at being anti-fossil fuel because, as we see, we're producing record amounts of crude oil. So, that's where the truth is these politicians say we're not energy independent, but we're a net exporter. We are basically, in an analyst perspective, we are net energy independent. We're producing more than anyone else. We're importing types of crude oil that we need to run in our refineries, and we're exporting types of crude oil that don't do well with our refineries. So that's it.
So
the senator's just off the mark. He's off the mark, and it's all political BS.
So the key that I was actually just getting ready to say is, obviously it's a presidential election year. This is like nothing we have ever seen before. This is not a show about politics per se, understandably. So we're not necessarily going to go deep into the woods here with it, but we're facing different dynamics than, at least in my lifetime, in your lifetime, we've ever seen before, and possibly in the history of the country. And you have it. You really have an extreme dynamic going on between the two political parties at this particular point. And fuel prices. And this is why I'm mentioning it. Fuel prices and oil and all of that is a part of that extreme conversation back and forth. So I'm wondering if over the next several months you aren't maybe going to have your hands full trying to just simply provide factual information, whether it goes against one party or the other's statements. You may be an equal opportunity offender at this particular point.
Matt, I've already got 3 emails from people on both sides claiming I'm just an idiot and I have no idea what I'm talking about.
So you've done your
to the
job
comments
today.
I just made.
You've done your job today.
I mean,
you have made both sides angry. See, that's what I did as a reporter.
And that's that's the thing is
That's
people
what I
want
did
you
as a reporter.
to sow their wheat. So, I just get sick of the politicians on both sides. Now, I tend to have theories on, which political side is making more noise right now, but it's because, So to your point, I absolutely, and here's the thing, Matt, with gas prices having, hit their non-inflation adjusted peak in 2022 after the Russia invasion of Ukraine, this is a very charged topic. It is going to be used, and there's going to be a lot of misinformation. There's going to be more misinformation than you can fit in the world's largest, dumps. There's going to be just so much misinformation coming from both sides on this subject.
But it's
concerning. I will openly say all the fact. It is very concerning because politicians are trying to use it to get their vote. And, Chuck Grassley is trying to insinuate that somehow President Biden has weakened U.S. oil production. He's probably weakened the long-term ability for the U.S. to produce as much oil. And that could change if the White House changes. But what he has not done has had such an impact that, it's shutting down the oil industry. The oil industry is alive. It's very well. We're producing record amounts of crude oil.
It's a heck of a needle to thread, so to speak, back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a little bit of truth, but not enough truth to call it fact. I mean,
exactly. And a lot of people take that needle, Matt, and they think the needle's much larger, right? They think a little truth is a lot of truth, and the other side probably thinks the opposite. So absolutely, it's nobody will sit here and argue. And by the way, there was a talk show on WJR, which is a radio station in Detroit, about this exact subject. And they misquoted me as saying that I said the president has no impact on oil and gas prices. And that's what they heard. That's what their ears translated something I said to. That's actually not what I said. But I will downplay it because a lot of Americans, because of this politically charged environment, they think the president has a huge hand in oil and gas prices. They don't. But that doesn't also mean, Matt, that the president has zero impact.
I was just going to say, so from the consumer standpoint, again, playing that other side for you, the consumer is going to say yes, but there is a Department of Energy that reports to the executive branch, and the Department of Energy kind of has control over things like crude and other aspects. So how can you say, Patrick, that it has, that the president can't influence one way or another? There is going to be a side of the consumer who's listening right now that's going to look at you and say, Patrick, you have no idea what you're talking about.
There's no denial that a president has enough power, but people vastly overestimate his ability. And the program that I was mentioned on in WJR, which specifically called me out, they mentioned that a president, part of his role is to play politics with OPEC. And that's why it's political, is the president should beg OPEC and oil companies. And that's why they say it's an inherently a presidential. They were suggesting that president has a lot of control because he could talk to OPEC. I'm sorry. OPEC is not a puppet. Mohammed bin Salman is not just going to listen to a U.S. president. He's going to do what's in the best interest of his country. That's what OPEC is doing.
Would he listen to you? Would he listen to you? Should we?
He's not going to listen to me. He's not going to listen to me. I mean, he'll listen to me, Matt, but doesn't mean he's going to take action. He'll listen to the president, but he's not going to take action. So, the program WJR is trying to make a suggestion that the president does have inherent control. I mean, President Trump, they'll listen to President Trump, and they might have a great relationship, and they might look like a couple bros, so to speak, and high five and fist bump and whatever else, but that doesn't mean that these countries are going to listen and adhere to what the U.S. president wants at all, right? The president's job is to not brown nose members to produce more oil. His allegiance should be the United States, not to get oil producers to produce more. And the oil ministers in those other countries, their job is not to just give the U.S. what it wants.
So is there anybody else that you're looking out there to X out? I mean, what... What are your plans?
Well, I'll
for
tell
today?
you what. I mean, there's a lot of people in the crosshairs lately that are saying I said one thing and that are not, and this is a nice, this podcast, we can do longer formats so we can go into the details. But
Well,
anyone
not
that gets
only
in
a
my
longer
way,
format, Patrick, not only a longer format, but it allows you to get your voice out exactly as intended, where there's no filter back and forth directly to the listener. That allows them to then be able to make a discernment for themselves to know exactly what you're saying and how you're saying it.
And thank you for that. Yes, 100%. And by the way, while I'm here talking about how President really doesn't have much control in oil and gasoline prices, I'm also going to throw one out to the other side because President Biden is not the one to thank for U.S. oil production rising to a record. Right? U.S. oil companies, thank you for increasing production, for doing what you do and producing oil. It's also generally, things like OPEC can have impacts. OPEC's got far more impact than a president. So I just inherently said things that are going to upset both sides, that it's not President Biden and that he can't take credit for it either. And it's amazing. President Biden, I've seen, and President Trump, by the way, I dug up some old tweets this week. Back in 2018, Matt, when the price of gasoline almost hit $3 a gallon, I mentioned to people that it's not Trump's fault because a lot of the press at the time, the main media outlets back in 2018 were saying, oh, gas prices are getting close to $3. It's Trump's fault. And I said, no, it's not. This happens every spring. And here we are 6 years later, and the exact same thing is happening. And the people that said it was Trump's fault now are saying it's not Biden's problem. It's like people talk out of both sides of their mouth. So I didn't want to go down this political road. But as an analyst, both sides make a lot of noise, and my job is to clear up that noise and have some sense, which is not so common these days.
So here's what I'm going to say as a hint to anybody that might be listening. Both political parties could benefit from a more stabilized price throughout the year by kind of reanalyzing the idea of having to constantly change blends of different types of gasoline into one or the other, summer, winter blend, whatever it is that's going on. People get upset and angry when they see or concerned or alarmed, like me, again, alarmed, like, wait a second.
Matt, that makes too much sense. That makes too much sense. Politicians would rather fire up a tweet that then they'd get X'd out by me. So I think that's what they're more concerned about is just complaining and not doing anything.
X'd out. I think we've coined possibly the new phrase. I'll take it. I kind of find that funny, but
he got ratioed. So we'll just leave it there. We X'd him out on the ratio because I think when and by the way, check out my Handle Gas Buddy guy and let me know what you think. Would love to see some of the podcast listeners jumping into our Twitter feeds and engaging with us there and asking your own questions. So, and
I've picked up several followers over the past week as well. By the way, I kept getting alerts saying, so and so is now following you, so and so. So I mean, that's the key.
Here's a new one. I just got a mention on Twitter or X. Gas production is due to Trump's policies. Biden has cut land by 58%. Well, first of all, federal land, Matt, is the minority of where oil companies drill. But it's true. Biden has made it much harder for oil companies to get permits. No denying that.
Is that also the case in a state production like Alaska, though?
Well, okay. So here's the thing about Alaska, right? Because Trump, in the last, I think, 3 weeks of his presidency, he opened up the Alaska Wildlife Refuge. No oil company had ever expressed really any interest in drilling there. There's no proven oil in these areas. And then Biden, came into the White House and probably less than 2 weeks after Trump opened it, he closed it. That doesn't make any difference. Opening up something that nobody wants to drill for, it's kind of like opening up a playground in the middle of an ocean or a swimming pool in the middle of the ocean. Nobody's going to go all the way to the middle of the ocean to go swim anyway. So nobody had any interest in drilling in Alaska. There's no infrastructure. There's no people in the middle in some of these very remote areas, right? The refuge has nobody in it. So you can't really argue that shutting it down, something that was irrelevant, is having a material impact. But this person also had said gas production is due to Trump's policies. No, it's due to oil companies. They're going to do and react to, to conditions. So if this person is correct and production is due to Trump's policies, well, then what happened in 2020?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Conveniently forgotten.
So the current president's State of the Union address is from the time of this recording, upcoming in the next several hours. So talk to us about, obviously neither of us have a script the media is provided with a script prior to the address beginning, but we don't have it directly in front of us as of now. But assuming in a presidential election year that the State of the Union address is sort of that launching pad, if you will, and that this administration has been very electric vehicle friendly, has been very determined to move the economy more toward that area. I don't think that's disputable. I think that's fairly factually accurate. And other aspects, do you have any thoughts as to, I mean, I'm assuming obviously the Biden administration is not going to do a 180 suddenly tonight and go, I love gasoline. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. I really think that is.
They can't,
they can't do that.
They can't reverse it now.
No, they can't do that.
They'll throw their base under the bus.
And so that's my point. That's why I'm bringing it up. So assuming that there's a more pounding of the podium, so to speak, in a generalized direction that the administration has been doing for the past 3 years, do you expect that to impact crude oil production / gasoline prices / whatever in the coming weeks?
It's going to be interesting. I don't really expect anything, to make waves. We've been hearing it from this administration 3 years. I'm not expecting any shocks tonight. Or I should say whenever the State of the Union is, because I haven't looked at when it actually is. I think you probably know it.
It's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central.
Okay. Yeah. As
of the time of this recording.
I'm sure I'll have some comments to lay out there tonight or tomorrow morning. But no, I don't expect it. We've had this administration in place for 3 years. We know kind of their line of thinking. We know that they have been very anti-fossil fuels, but at the same time, they have had a loosening stance to the oil industry, right? President Biden has asked them to increase more production. So from the time he was sworn in, he's really backed off on some of those really heavy-handed initial responses he had. Having said that, it's going to be interesting because I think the president is acutely aware that Americans have this steadfast entitlement of having cheap and affordable gasoline prices, Matt. So it's going to be interesting if he gives any comments going the other way, like alluding to the fact that, any policy shifts there. I'm not expecting it because, again, he has to satisfy his base, but I'm not expecting a whole lot to change. I mean, he's going into an election year. It will be interesting. And, I'll follow up with some comments. But, yeah, no, it's 3 years. If this was the first year and he announced some, potential policy shifts, I think he just doesn't want to rock the boat. Right at this stage, he doesn't want to.
Yeah, you would almost think he would want to provide some. Again, not the speechwriter. I have no knowledge about anything, but you would almost think he would want to try to stabilize and create a smooth path forward a little bit. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Any president
totally
at this point on either political side.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing, Matt. At the end of the day, even if you don't need to fill your tank, you have a pulse of the economy.
Oh, but
each
Patrick,
time you drive by the gas
my tank.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you see the signs even if you don't need to fill up, right? So you drive by and you're like, oh, I feel awful about this economy because gasoline starts with a 3 and not a 2. A lot of Americans, gas prices are the pulse
litmus test. They're the litmus
of the
test.
Economy.
Yes.
And if President Biden, and now here's one benefit he will get, and bookmark this, write this down, whatever. Gas prices will, unless there's some sort of late season major hurricane, gas prices will go down between the summer and the election. And people are going to have all these conspiracy theories about, and by the way, it's hilarious. I'm also seeing people think that, the president's going to release more oil from the SPR. And actually, come to mention the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve continues to be refilled. It's at a slow pace, but the interesting thing was yesterday, the Department of Energy basically issued a request for proposal for September. So they're literally thinking about buying oil that's going to be delivered in September. And every month between now and then, the election, the strategic reserve is going to continue to go up. It's more than half full. So, but it's also a lot lower than it was before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which is, by the way, the catalyst for using the SPR. But prices will go down, and it could benefit the president because it's going to be timely. But almost every president gets that benefit. Actually, with Trump, though, in the run-up to the election, gas prices actually jumped 50 cents between 2020 and the election in 2020. Well, of course, it was COVID, right? And we were at the depths of COVID in April and May before the election. And then prices went up 50 cents a gallon by the time the election rolled around. And they went up another 20 cents between the election and when Biden was sworn in.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I just want cheaper gas prices.
You have a lot of opinions there, don't you?
I'll say it to you this way. Whenever I was a news director, a news reporter, a bureau chief, a street reporter, whatever the case may be, this is how I will answer your question there. If I didn't tick off both sides equally, I got concerned that I had done my job incorrectly. And then the other thought that I learned many years ago in news reporting is that what other people think of me is truly none of my business. I just put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward, and I know how I live my life. And so that's what kind of kept me going, because it is tough sometimes to thread that needle. But I always knew that I was going to get in some serious trouble if I ticked off only one side for a story rather than the other, unless it was an extenuating circumstance where it was just blatantly obvious. So when it comes to gas prices, I don't think anybody has to rub a crystal ball and try to figure out where my thoughts are. I want cheap gas. I don't care. It's as very simple as that. And yes, when your father is texting you and your other co-host of a podcast is saying, Patrick, what is going on? I think we've just had a bit of a jolt that caused a little alarm in even some of your personal friends and family network.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to have to change my number and then not tell my friends and family.
No, you can't do that. I mean, but that's almost a litmus test to tell you that there is obviously something that's taking place when those of us...
The alarm bells are going off.
Exactly. On such a close level, then it's almost like, oh, well, that is a scary problem at that point. I have no idea what that beeping was, but we'll go for it.
That's the alarm that gas prices are going up.
Oh, gosh, no.
Another gas station raised its price and you're getting an alarm.
Oh, I know what it was. The power just went off. So we're all good there. I've got 5 hours of battery backup. But yeah, so that's just one of those things, obviously, to keep in mind. So
we offended the politicians. They're trying to shut you down. There's a conspiracy theory for you.
By the way, there is a story out there about an explosive demand that America is now running out of power. I guess that could also mean something as well. Before we start wrapping up, though, and I guess we can wrap up on this, where do you see prices going for the next several days up to the next week? Where are we now? Where are we going?
Well, Matt, I think where are we now? Well, we could be in short order for a brief pause in the national average. I think we could camp out with the national average at about 340. But I think for most people, that doesn't mean much because some areas are going up, some are not. I think most areas are going to continue seeing the slow march higher. See what I did there?
I did.
And so March is going to be, it came in more like a lamb, and it's probably going to turn into a bit of a lion here over the next couple of weeks. And by the way, looking at gas prices from a week ago, there's only 2 states that have seen lower prices. So I'm going to, like I said.
And they are what? Tell me what. Tell me where.
Indiana, down 6 cents. By the way, Indiana engages in price cycling, so they could see a big jump up at a moment's notice. And Texas, where there is also price cycling in some areas. Texas down 3 cents. Everyone else is up. So,
well, I think that's going to be the border. I could be at the Indiana border within about 2 to 2.5 hours of where I'm sitting.
That's Texas, a long drive. That's a long drive to save a little bit.
Save 6 cents a gallon. I mean, sometimes I'm irrational like that. I'm just saying. Just throwing it out there.
Well, take a long drive. Just make sure you use the Gas Buddy app, and for anyone out there too, always during these times of year when gas prices are trending higher. Your reminder is this: fire up the Gas Buddy app, take the 10 or 15 seconds, and make sure you're not getting hosed on your next fill up. By the way, the Gas Buddy app, some cool new features rolling out there. If you click the station in the Gas Buddy app, we have new offers for people. So we are evolving beyond helping you find lower gas prices. But if you click the station listing now, we have offers and services, and I'm seeing some deals on very delicious food and beverages that you can get at your pit stop. So check the Gas Buddy app out. If you don't have it, certainly download it. But hopefully all you listeners are smart enough to check the Gas Buddy app before you fill up.
Well, I tell you what, how about we end on that note? You know what? Make sure you give us a yell out on X, formerly known as Twitter. I guess I'll say it that way.
You won't get X'd out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, no guarantee, at least from me. I don't know about Patrick. He's apparently growing a reputation for it, but you can at Gas Buddy Guy for Patrick, Over a Barrel Matt for myself, or the show itself, Over a Barrel Show. And Patrick, they can also email us as well.
At podcast@gasbuddy.com. We'd love to hear from you, and make sure you hit the follow, like, subscribe button depending on our social channels. But, Matt, hopefully the State of the Union goes pretty well tonight, but we'll have some juicy comments for you here next week.
Absolutely. Have a great one.